Take advantage of the air conditioning to tell you part of the story and some of the background, because when we get to the top of the mountain, it's going to be very hot. But our story is, the story of Masada is known to us for 2,000 years. How do we know the story of Masada? From where? From one historian by the name of Josephus Flavius, actually Flavius Josephus, whose given name, his birth name is Joseph, Yosef, ben Matityahu. He is a Jewish priest from Jerusalem who grew up in the priestly sect. He was an aristocrat. He was very well educated. He had very strong contacts in Rome. But when the revolt broke out in 66, he was instructed to go and lead the battle against Rome on the northern front. And that's what he did. At the first, he had quite a few successes until he didn't. In the battle of the town of Yodfat in the western Galilee, 40,000 people were slaughtered. Now, when you rebel against Rome, like I told you, many people rebelled against Rome once. Jews rebelled many times. Why only once? Because Rome's response to rebellion is harsh as harsh can be. That means that everybody ends up dead. The men end up dead in all sorts of weirdish ways. Skinned alive, quartered, pieced off, crucified, you name it. The Romans were experts at thinking up weird ways of killing people and extending horror and pain and torture. Women were raped to death. Babies were killed by smashing their heads against the wall, and children were sold into slavery. And life of a slave is terrible, terrible, terrible. That's it. That's the only result to rebellion, which is why people who rebelled once. And that's what happened in Yodfat. And Josephus Yosef ends up in a cave with some of his followers, about 38 men, and together they decide, he argues against it, but they decide rather than fall to the hands of the Romans to take their own lives. To fall on their swords, so to speak, because the option of going to Roman hand is a horrible, horrible death. They don't want that. They draw lots. They take some kind of a lottery, and think about this. This is how they did it. They all stood in a circle. This is called the Josephus problem. Look it up on YouTube. It's called the Josephus problem. You stand in a circle, 38 people. Everybody stabs the person on their left, and then take a step in. And then you stab the person on your left, then you take a step in. Where do you need to stand in the circle to be last? Right? So Josephus figured it out. It's a very complicated algorithm, but he knew exactly where he needs to stand. He was second to last man, the young man next to him. He persuaded him to give himself up. He was considered a traitor in his lifetime. But he gave himself up to Flavius Silva, who was the commander of the Roman force, and adopted his name, Flavius, and became the house scribe of the family Flavius. His name is now Flavius Josephus, and he wrote the story of the rebellion of the Jews against Rome. It's the best source that we have today for the events of that rebellion. And he is the one that tells us the story of Masada. So the story is known, the book is known, but the location has been lost. After Masada, there was a Roman army. After the Roman army, there were Byzantine monks for 200 years. 7th century, boom, it's gone. Nobody knows where it is. Until the 1800s, 2 American explorers are on their boat. They're following instructions. They're making tea. The boil boils too fast. Why does the water boil too fast? Higher barometric pressure. They jump up in horror because the oil boiled too fast, and they see the top of the mountain. They come up to the top of the mountain and say, "Ho, this looks like Masada. By George, I think you're right." They come up here, they do a survey, and boom, they identify Masada. Masada has been found. Almost immediately from when it's known to be found, it becomes a focal point for pilgrimages. It's Zionist youth groups. This is pre-state. It's the beginning of the immigrations to Israel. It's the beginning of the Zionist movement building, forging a nation. And they find Masada as a symbol. Tell me who your heroes are, and I know a lot about you. If your heroes are authors, or movie actors, or rabbis, or Jesus, or suicide bombers, I know a lot about your society. The early Zionists were looking to forge a new Jewish society, a society of the strong Jew, the Jew that fights, that stands his ground. It doesn't, just turn the other cheek and just walk away and get kicked out of whatever country they get kicked out of. Remember that the reality that you kids are growing up into is a reality which is new to Jews. For the last 50, maybe 70 years. Okay? When I was growing up, Jews were on the lowest rung of society. They were the most humiliated, most oppressed, most kicked out people around. And they were looking for a new way, a new Jew, a new hero, so they can forge a nation. And they found it in Islam. Look at this. What do you think these are? Stone vessels from the Great Revolt. Okay, great. What do they look like? You've seen them on this trip. I'm pretty sure you've seen them also back home. Right. What are these? What are these? Ritual hand washing. Look, they look almost exactly the same as the one that we use today. They're made of stone, though. Why stone? We're way past the Stone Age. You pick pottery into it. So why stone? Because stone is what rejects impurity. Okay? The ritual bathing is about ritual purity. Not necessarily physical purity, but ritual purity. Which means that there's nothing that is more important, I shouldn't say nothing, but one of the most important things to Jews of the first century is ritual purity. That's why they immerse themselves in water all the time. That's why Christians baptize. That's where it comes from. From the Jewish tradition of immersing yourself in water and washing, cleansing the hands is something very, very important. And here we find 2,000-year-old, almost exactly the same thing, right here beside. From the moment Masada is found, it becomes a national project. This is Yigal Yadin. It's the archaeologist I told you about. This is the guy that was in the movie with Ben Gurion. Remember, he was a general in the Israeli army in the War of Independence. And now he's an archaeologist digging in Masada. Here, he has Ben Gurion come over. Look, it's the two of them. But now he's an archaeologist and he's a prime minister. Why is a prime minister coming to an archaeological site? Because of Masada. Because it's that central element of Jewish heroism that we're all looking for. This is Paula, which is Ben Gurion's wife. She's not terribly happy about this time.
She said
If the CNN helicopter was hovering over Masada on the eve of the war, this is what we would see. You see a fortress on a mountain surrounded by 37 towers. You see a Roman camp surrounding the mountain, a wall preventing anybody from leaving. How do you get a Roman army up a mountain? So a Roman army's advantage is in its force, brute force. If they start to climb the mountain single file, they get picked off one by one. So how do you get a Roman army up a mountain utilizing the advantages of the Roman army? You build a road. Which is what they did. I'm going to see over there. That's the ramp. We're going to see that ramp. Let's go over here, everybody. I usually skip this, but because Eric's father-in-law did the special effects for the movie, and there's scenes from the movie here, we're all going to see it. Don't forget your hat.